you so much for carving out some time this evening with us. For those who don't know me, I'm Tony Cayazzo. I'm a project manager here at Reena. We're excited to host this event tonight, which will be covering a lot of material. I want to remind everybody again that this is a recording, and we will be sharing it earlier next week. So again, sit back, relax, get up as you need, since you will have access to the event to rewatch at your convenience. Before we dive into our event tonight, I invite all of us to take a moment to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of all the land that we are joining from today, which each of us all call home. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation people who have lived and cared for these lands for thousands of years. I'm joining today from Toronto, in the territory of the Treaty 13, the lands of Mississaugas of the First Credit Nation. We pay our respects to their stewardship and also to the Huron, Wendat, and Haudenosaunee, who have cared deeply for the land where Reena operates and where the Frankfort family Reena residence will soon stand. In paying homage to these lands, let's also reflect on the Humber and Don rivers that weave through Toronto, linking the past and present. These waters have been the lifeblood of the region, connecting Indigenous communities through networks of travel, trade, and life for countless generations. Soon, the Frankfort family Reena residence will take its place within this broader landscape, a landscape richly shaped by the waters that run through it. It will stand as a symbol of community, continuity, and connection, a testament to the rich tapestry of history and the future we are privileged to be part of. As a representative of Reena, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory. Our engagement here is both a commitment and responsibility to foster improved relationships between nations and deepen our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. Now, let's focus on another foundational aspect of our community and what Reena stands for, our shared humanity, embracing each other's needs to be seen, heard, and recognized for who they are. I'll give you a moment to review this slide. And as you read these words, I invite you to consider the strength found in our diversity and shared journey we're on towards fostering equality and dignity for everyone. Let's embrace this message as both our guiding principle and our shared goal. Now, with the spirit of the last message, let's shift to the goal of today's presentation. Again, thank you for everyone for joining and for those who just joined. We aim to provide information on the Frankfort family Reena residence and an in-depth understanding of the fee-for-service residential program. We want to equip you and your family with the knowledge necessary to assess whether this model is the right fit for you. We also look forward to your feedback and continuing to the next stage of engagement. To achieve this goal for today's event, we'll begin by introducing you to my co-hosts who have joined us today. Next, we'll provide an overview of Reena for those who may not be familiar with our organization, followed by an introduction to the Frankfort family Reena residence and updates on this exciting project. Afterwards, we'll dive into the core content of tonight's discussion, the fee-for-service residential program, where we will present information on what the program is, eligibility, the guiding principles, and the financial costs. And at the end, we'll share information on the next steps and end with a questions and answers session. All right, so introductions to my co-hosts today. We're joined by Brian Keshen, Reena's CEO, and leading the charge in the Frankfort family Reena residence vision. We also have Sandy Stemp, Reena's COO, whose leadership has been crucial in the realization of our past affordable housing projects. Again, myself, for people who just joined, Tony Cayazzo. I'm a project manager here at Reena, overseeing various projects, including the plans for the operations at the Frankfort Reena residence. And we also have Lindsay Gold, a social worker at Reena, who is leading the charge in the intake process for this project. Now, before we get into the material, I do want to go over some guidelines today. First, if you have any questions during the event, we are joined by one of my colleagues, Joey. He has renamed himself to Send Questions Here. So please direct any of your questions that you have throughout the event to him. You can find the chat option at the chat bubble on the bottom of your screen of the Zoom. So if you do need any clarification or if you have any questions during the event, please do so. We are going to cover a lot of material. And again, we will have a recording, so you'll be able to view it. Again, next week, we will share that recording with all of you, as well as a frequently asked question document. And we'll also give you the opportunity to submit a survey just to give us some feedback about tonight's event. Also, during the RSV process, we did ask you some questions about the Frankfort project and the fee-for-service program. So we really took that in mind, and we really tailored this presentation to be able to address those questions. And we tried our hardest to include most of them in today's presentation. And lastly, during the presentation, I want to give opportunities to engage with many people who are joining us today. We have about 200 people who are joining, which is fantastic. So I will be including some polls to engage with you and to gather some insights into who is joining and what are your interests. So let's jump into one of those polls right now. Just give me one moment. Right, so our first poll today. All right, so I'd like to hear who's attending today's event. Are you someone who's interested participant? Are you a family member of someone who is an interested participant? Are you someone in the community who's really interested in learning about the Frankfurt project? Or are you a community organization who's interested in learning about the project as well? So I'll give you a few moments. Wow, lots of engagement here. Amazing. It looks like the majority of people so far, about 90%, I don't know if you can see it on your end, are family members who are really here to learn about the project and the fee-for-service program. But we do have some people who are interested participants themselves, community members, and community organizations. Thanks so much. And I've scattered a few other of those polls throughout the event. Thank you. All right, so without further ado, let me welcome Reena's CEO, Brian Keshen, to the virtual stage. Brian, the floor is yours.
Oops. So thank you, Tony, and thank you everyone for joining us. And this is like an amazing moment. The history of getting to here begins 8 years ago, or more accurately, 51 years ago, when Reena was founded. As most of you should know by now, Reena is a nonprofit charitable organization. Its mission is to promote dignity, individuality, independence, personal growth, and community inclusion for people with diverse abilities within a framework of Jewish culture and values. Reena has been built on some clear, and you can see the acronym there, clear values. They include care, the idea of chesed and tzedek and compassion, leadership, and repairing the world, leaving the world in a better place every day than it was the day before. Empowerment, recognizing that others have value, just as you have value. You need to respect that and care for people. Accessibility, we need to remove those barriers that block people from being part of community, and ultimately respect for each other. And it starts with respect for oneself. And I know our staff have actively engaged in strategies that support these values in behavior, in the way they act and do and support people. So just go on to the next slide. So a bit about, as I said, Reena was founded in 1973 by a group of passionate parents, probably many of whom you may know, and many of you have been those parents who have started and seek to build something better for their kids. These parents started with a small venture of starting 2 group homes, a summer camp, and today we sit with 32 group homes, 2 existing apartment buildings, this 3rd one on its way. We have 60 independent living apartments. We have children's programs, adults programs, day programs. We have grown to be the 4th largest developmental disability service in the province. And certainly in the Jewish community, we're the 2nd largest care bed provider, believe it or not. A surprising thing from a small start of a few families. We have a strong infrastructure, lots of different models and living models, but we certainly don't have enough. There is so much need, as expressed by just the presence of all of you. We have over 800 employees, and really proud to try to make a difference, not only locally. When we do something, we take the value and we try to say, if it's true for us, it's probably true for everyone else. Can we teach others and model it? So we've been very active provincially and federally in all areas that we develop expertise in. Next slide. So a bit about this model that we've developed. Again, we opened our first in 2012 at the Lubbock campus. That was a 60-unit residence. And it's about more than just space. We can create housing, we can create space, but we need to embrace all of us and create a belonging, a sense of belonging. I remember being asked, what's home to me? And I often say it's this place between my two arms. It's where I get a hug. It's where warmth emits. And that's what I think the intentional community model is about. It's about people caring for each other, being engaged, involved. It's being about something more than yourself, but still being taken care of. There are unique elements. We'll talk about those from a design and feature point of view. They're unique to us and our model. And because of this model, we've started an organization called the Intentional Community Consortium. Now 34 agencies across the province have joined us in trying to replicate similar models and similar structures across Canada now. So it's quite exciting to see this impact. And the Frankfort Family Reena residence will be the third of our intentional community models. So where is it located? And for those who don't know, I'm sure you all are very aware. Elm Ridge, just east of Marley. The intent here is we're building a 20-story apartment building with 111 units. There are spaces for 168 residents. We have everything from bachelor to 3-bedroom. We have one 4-bedroom respite. We have a range of programs and spaces. What we don't have is a lot of barriers to access. This is built to what's called a B3 fire standard, which means anyone with a disability or getting supports can live here. That's not commonly found out in the public and in general buildings. But we've also added places of engagement, games room, a movie space, art space, a gym, and other things. From a timing point of view, we are on track. Next week, on the 10th, we will see our crane go up, and we're moving along with a 18-month build schedule. Things can change. We could improve on that. Last project we did, we finished 2 months early, but you never know. So we're very optimistic about this. Next. So the construction timeline, as I said, 18 months beginning May 2024, completed early 2026. And again, we have a great team of a construction team, so very committed to that. Okay, this is my last piece. The residence has, as I said, 111 units. There are a range of services and partners who will occupy the building. And we have, within the residential program model to mix and create the mix, we have 22 fee-for-service residential spaces. That is not primarily ministry funded or health funded, but individually funded models where the individual or the family system is involved. And that's what we're walking through tonight. Okay, next.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate all that, the update on the Frankfort project. I do want to kind of go back to the previous slide for a moment where we do talk about diversity, because the building itself is going to be a home to individuals from all walks of life. Today, we're going to be talking about the fee-for-service program, but I want to let you know on parallel, we are having conversations with community organizations in the area and looking at opportunities to partner with them and see what type of opportunities come from that. And when things change around community organizations, we will update our website because those organizations who become partners will be the ones that will be managing their own intake process and their own registry as well of people who are interested. So I just want to share that with everybody. So before we go into our next segment about the fee-for-service program, I'm going to launch one of our second poll question. Just really wanting to know which element of a residential program is most important to you. A community, so being part of a supportive and active environment, costs, safety and security, accessibility and inclusivity, or a place with support in place. So just give me a moment to bring that one up for you. Everyone should be seeing that poll on their end. Amazing, a lot of diversity here. A lot of people about community, which is truly what the intentional community is about. Great to see that. Amazing, thanks everyone, appreciate that. I'll leave that up for a moment. But in the meantime, I want to introduce you to Reena's COO, Sandy Stemp, who's going to really reflect on our first two intentional communities that Brian was talking about. Us to the fee-for-service program. Sandy, over to you.
Great. Well, lovely to speak to everybody tonight, and certainly my pleasure. This is such an exciting program and project. And I have those of you who know me. I know that I have been at Reena for many years, and all of these projects. One of the things that Brian had said is that there's so much need. And really, we, as an organization, getting into this whole element of building buildings really comes from that huge need. But we're not the only one, and there has to be many, many other options. So we build because we need to, but also others need to. The structure of our residence is that we always say it is one option for housing, but it certainly doesn't meet the need for everyone. So I know that in this time of housing needs, people really look and go, "Oh my goodness, is this everything?" And it's not. It needs to be a fit and a match for each person. And we know that RENA operates many different types of living environments. And the reason is because there are so many different and unique needs. The Sandy Cashin Arena residence was, it probably took well over 10 years to conceptualize and to think about this type of model. We had never done it before. If with each model we have learned and try to keep adding features that we think about. So this particular model, like you said, it was very unique for us. It was certainly a big jump for us as an organization, and I have to say that it has really shone bright and really surpassed what we had thought that it would be. So it really has been an amazing model, and there's been some research done on this building. We are very happy when we opened that we were able to get researchers really interested in this. So this has been opened in 2012, and it's located on the La Bove campus in Maple. We do have 15 fee-for-service residents in the building, and this was sort of the first time that we embarked on a fee-for-service residential type of model. So these residents that they enter into various agreements with RENA. We'll learn more about that. There's 84 individuals within the building. And again, our intentional community means that it is a mixed and integrated building. So there's many different individuals who live in the building. We believe diversity really is very important for buildings and communities, right? You need a mix of individuals, but we also don't build housing just to build housing. We build housing for people that have not been successful in other types of housing. If people can be successful in other types of housing, then other types of housing should meet their needs. When we're building communities that are called intentional communities, and they're for people that typically might have had barriers to other types of apartments and haven't been successful in those models, are living precariously or don't have housing options, and this can meet their needs. And so we do in intentional communities, everybody within the building needs something. They may need have mental health supports, they may need developmental supports, they may need physical supports, they may be seniors and need some healthcare supports, they may have medical complexities, but there has to be a higher sense of belonging and some flexibility and understanding of everybody in the building, that everybody needs something. And that way, we expect people to have a higher sort of buy-in to the community, and to acceptance of all people within the building. So when I talk about supports, it's welcoming to the whole building. And this particular building has residents, does have a respite suite, very well used respite suite. And on the main level, there's a number of great spaces where we've been running some very successful day programs. This is where Tony will cut me off and say, Sandy, stop talking. It's such a great topic. So the Lou Fruitman Reena residence was opened in 2021 in the middle of the pandemic. And yes, that offered its own set of, incredible challenges to try to open a very, very large project in the middle of a pandemic. We also, similar type of concept, we're really committed to an integrated, inclusive community, lots of community partners. Home and community care is also both in Sandy Kesh and Reena residence and in this Reena residence. We have an incredible home and community care team, and a shout out to them because they are amazing at supporting our buildings. This one is located in Thornhill, right beside the Toby and Henry Battle Developmental Center. We have just a few less fee-for-service residents. We have 6 fee-for-service residents in this building. It's 138 adults who live in this building, and again, a real mix of individuals. And again, the key, or the how we have work the building to be successful, is that everybody needs something, but everybody is different, everybody is diverse, and there is that sense of community. There are some specialized units that we worked with our partners on to create some specialized units in the building for people with complex healthcare needs. And this was a population that we really felt that as adults, they did not have a lot of options, and creating this kind of specialized structure was important for us. And there are respite spaces, and the respite program is just getting started at this building. And in our residences, I often think that, again, I said it's not for everyone because it can be very hustle and bustle and lots of things going on. Our buildings are different, and the feeling and the space and how it's utilized are different. Lots of people usually at the front door to greet you. We try to create that common space, like as you walk into the buildings. But it's a way, our buildings are really there to kind of build that socialization. There's that common space is wonderful. Like I said, almost like a hub. Um, there's recreational events that are scheduled to in the building where people can participate. And again, we try to do things that are inclusive to everyone. We're really, really happy to have the Greena initiative at Reena, and which means, as you can see there with that picture, we have lots of wonderful opportunity to have individuals who live in the building participate in their environment and physical environment, and growing food and cooking and lots of great things like that. So the building is more than just housing, and it's more than just housing with supports. It's housing with supports that are customized and also thoughtfully constructed so that we can increase people's socialization and feeling of being a community. So this gives you an example of some of our partners, and we're always looking and reaching out for people that can partner in the building. Some partners actually have, as Tony said, their own units, and they will hold the way that they bring people in that belongs to them, and we create a collaboration agreement with organizations. We also really look to organizations that can provide some supports like home and community care in the building. And I see we have Circle of Care where we do have some of the home and community care workers that come into the building. We also even have, I was going to say, Vaughan Community Health Center has done sessions, educational sessions in our building. But certainly a shout out to people like March of Dimes, which has been a long-standing partner of us in our buildings and incredibly successful. And Your Support Services Network, Cheers is a new partner at the Lou Fruitman, Safe Haven, which has done an amazing job around complex care in the Lou Fruitman. CAMH, which is a very strong partner of ours at Reena, and the Schwartz Reisman Center, which is a partner as far as like just some of the recreational opportunities, but also the family health team that is located there. So this is some really interesting synergies as we work with our partners. We think about we understand each other. We gain more information about what we do, and we try to leverage that and create some interesting ways for us to work together. And I think this is my last slide. So, and then I will pass it on. And some of the more details of the fee-for-service residential model are going to be presented after this. But I could tell you a little bit about what is the program and what it's not. So this is a fee-for-service residential program, which means the families do cover the full cost of the individual themselves, of their family members' living arrangements and their support services. So we enter into these agreements. Um, this particular model is for individuals who do have the financial means to cover the rent, which is set to the affordable housing rate, and support services. And with this, they're able to obviously access the housing, but also all of the different kind of spaces that are available within the building. And those spaces mean that there's offerings in there that are also a fee for service around programming or social activities. The program is managed by Reena, and we oversee all of the eligibility, the intake, and all of the individuals that are coming into the building, the decisions, the overall program. Even with our partner agencies, we do a lot of collaboration about fit and match. And as we said, fit and match is the key, is that it's not a panacea, that the program and the residential model is not for everyone. And we really need to find out, is the fit and match the right one? So we spend a lot of time with that. What is the program? So I often, people, when they see a building, sometimes people think that all of the staff and the things come with it. You have to think of this as that we are very fortunate to be able to get the bricks and the mortar of this building, but in many ways, the services are not there. So that's why we have to employ a fee for service model. This model is not funded by the ministry. So there's no operating dollars that are being funded by any ministry. So, and there's no access to ministry funds in our building or through this trying to state your interest in the building. So there's no way to access ministry funds. Those go through centralized the key centralized mechanisms that you are probably already aware of. So if you're in health, you're accessing services and supports through your health funders and your health access points. If you're in developmental services, it's often the DSO that you'll be accessing those. So there's no additional subsidies. So a lot of people will ask that. Very, very expensive to build this type of housing and incredibly expensive to operate. So the fees, as we'll hear in a little bit, are what they are, but there are not additional subsidies. And this is not anything to do with Developmental Services Ontario or DSO or any other ministry wait list or access point. So this is a separate entity as far as a building goes. And the residential model, we're building it with the building blocks of people paying for services and supports. And that's the way that we're able to operate. Unfortunately, there were the days in the past where supports and buildings were funded together, but that's not the case here. It is only the physical structure of the building that we are very lucky to be building and providing, but we have to be very, I would say, responsible as an organization so that we can be sustainable long term as far as ensuring that we have the correct operating cost to run the program. Tony, am I okay?
Yeah, thank you. Before we
Okay.
proceed to the next slide, I was wondering if you maybe could speak a little bit about kind of the staffing in the building.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do when we talk about fit and match is that we are careful, very careful, and cognizant of everybody who comes into the building because it's a very complex model. As you can imagine, with the size of it, the number of people in the building, some of the risks and liability of the organization. So the staffing in the building are staff that have been vetted and belong to the organizations that are the partners in the building. So we typically do not have other types of staffing or other types of people coming in the building. As you can imagine, that could be very difficult to manage. It also would be very difficult for us to understand who is with who and doing what. So we typically want to ensure that each of the agency have done their due diligence, including ourselves, to ensure that all staffing going into the building are part of an organization, are accountable and responsible. The standards, the quality, and the type of expectations are clear for those staff. So it's one way to ensure that the model and that the people who come into our building are supposed to be there. So you're either a legitimate staff person coming in to provide a service or you're a tenant in the building. But other types of arrangements we have been very cautious about because of what it means for the environment of our building and the safety of our building and the integrity of our building. I hope that answered that question, Tony.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sandy. Really appreciate that. That really gives us a good foundation as we continue our presentation on the fee-for-service model. So Lindsay Gold, again, the lead social worker for this program, will continue with this fee-for-service discussion. And Lindsay, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Tony, and glad to see everyone here. What an exciting time, and glad to be here to give you a bit more information about our fee-for-service program. First of all, I'm going to go over who is eligible for the fee-for-service program. The following is a list of prerequisites for the fee-for-service model, and this applies to the individual, not their family members. So the individual must be a Canadian citizen or have permanent resident status living in Ontario. They must be over 18 upon their move-in date, must demonstrate that they can sustain the cost of the program on a long-term basis. They must have an intellectual developmental disability as well as being DSO eligible. They must demonstrate that they themselves make less than $80,000 annually and have an asset limit of $75,000. They must agree to provide a notice of assessment annually, as this is an affordable housing project. And as necessary, as it means to help us understand one's supports needs, interested individuals may also need to participate in our overnight respite program with Reena. All right, now I'll go over our 8 fit and match principles. The selection process for the fee-for-service program is guided by the following 8 principles that ensure applicants are a good fit for the intentional community. I will explain each principle one at a time. Principle 1, connection with Reena. As a part of our exploration, assessment, and intake process with individuals for our fee-for-service program at the Frankfort Family Reena residence, we will prioritize applicants with established connections to Reena. This includes those already receiving support or services from Reena, and those linked through historical ties or meaningful engagement with Reena. This approach recognizes the value of continuity, familiarity with Reena's values, and the depth of existing relationships. Many of you here at this presentation are the people we see as being connected to Reena. You are people who have standing and established relationships with Reena. Having these established relationships will help with forward movement to continue to build our existing relationships with you. The next principle we'll touch on is number 2, financial feasibility and sustainability. Applicants must demonstrate not only the current financial capacity to afford the costs associated with the fee-for-service program, such as rent and direct staffing support, but also a forward-looking financial plan should they face changing needs. This ensures sustainability and the long-term viability of the program. As a reminder, and as Sandy has already communicated, this is not a funded housing opportunity. Fee-for-service will mean that all the costs to pay for the fee-for-service unit and supports need to come from sources such as family and the individual, prior and current financial planning. It can also incorporate the use of current government funding, such as ODSP and the passport funding, for such things as recreational costs. When thinking about financial feasibility and sustainability, it's important to think about current and future financial planning. This will help ensure that the funds for the costs of the fee-for-service program are available on an ongoing basis. As a part of our next steps, we will share tools with you related to financial planning, and we'll look to interested families to demonstrate that they are engaging in financial planning. I recognize that many of you want to know more about the estimated costs associated with living in the fee-for-service program. To help you better understand the costing, after I have explained all of the 8 fit and match principles, I will go through mock examples from an illustrated perspective. As a part of these examples, I will break down some of the costs associated with the fee-for-service program. We will spend some time on this shortly, don't you worry. The third principle that we would like to explain to you is the level of support needed. Applicants' support needs must align with the services available in the fee-for-service program, which range from low to moderate support needs. This ensures that residents receive appropriate care and that staff are also not overextended. Part of the evaluation, assessment, and intake process will examine each individual's ideal level of support. This includes the amount of support hours one needs in a day and/or week, the ideal time of the day that support is needed, the types of support that is needed. Examples of types of support can include monitoring, reminding, coaching, hands-on support with tasks and activities in the home and in the community, such as basic personal hygiene, straightforward cooking, cleaning, and laundry, staying alone in the day and night, navigating one's community, self-advocacy, and many more. As something to note, I wanted to highlight that during a transition time, more total support hours will be planned for each individual when they first move in. This will allow for individuals to get used to their new home and continue to develop their skills to set them up for success. We envision a transition time lasting approximately 2 to 3 months. We will provide more information about transition time in future slides. The fourth principle we'd like to highlight is the readiness for independent living. Applicants must demonstrate that their readiness and desire for a more independent living situation. As a part of our evaluation, assessment, and intake process, we'll be asking interested individuals and families to complete an online assessment tool. Also a part of this process, myself, my fellow intake social work team, Reena supervisors, and community-based professionals, such as an occupational therapist, will be completing our own assessments and evaluations. This will involve phone, virtual, and in-person consultation and conversation, as well as a potential overnight stay in a Reena respite unit, as I already mentioned when I talked about eligibility. For us, readiness also includes stability in one's life and support needs, such as one's behavior and medical support needs. There are times in people's lives that one is going through instability. This is not the time to transition to a new living opportunity. As Sandy has already mentioned, it's important to inform you that our Frankfort Family Reena Residents Fee-for-Service program was developed to provide housing to individual applicants who are not currently residing in an independent living environment, such as those living at their family home or in another setting where they cannot practice independence. Our fee-for-service program will be a place for those who have not had this opportunity to practice and use independent skills. The fifth principle is family readiness and support. Applicants' families must demonstrate an understanding and willingness to engage in the process. This will show that they are prepared to support their own and the applicant's transition to and continued success in the fee-for-service program. To us, family readiness involves being open and engaged in a move out of the home. So, as a part of our evaluation, assessment, and intake process, we will be communicating closely with family members to determine if they are ready for their loved one to transition out of the home. We will communicate with families about what their support will look like going forward once their loved one has moved to the Frankfort Family Reena residence. From our perspective, ideal family support on an ongoing basis will offer ongoing stability and availability during transition time and on an ongoing basis, ongoing communication with Reena staff to maintain collaborative and supportive relationships, family members to recognize the need for and to actively provide their loved one the opportunity to practice their independent living skills and continue to grow as a person. This is about having their own wings and flying, of course, with the supports in place that meet their needs. As a part of our ongoing work with families through our evaluation, assessment, and intake process, we will continue to look for resources to support families, and we'll share them with you as they're available. When Tony communicates about next steps in our upcoming slides, he will provide a link to Reena's updated family handbook. This indicates steps for families around expectations and provides guidelines about our programs to families and Reena staff. The sixth principle is all about embracing community diversity and activity. Applicants must be open to and appreciative of living in a diverse community. This includes respecting Reena's framework of Jewish values and being comfortable and respectful of neighbors from various backgrounds, cultures, abilities, and walks of life. As you have already eloquently heard from both Brian and Sandy, but I'd like to highlight it again, intentional communities involve a diversity of people. This includes people with different types of disabilities and support needs, such as medical, mental health, physical, or complex care, people of different ages, cultures, and traditions. As a part of our evaluation, assessment, and intake process, we will be asking and communicating with individuals and their families about how and if they will embrace community diversity and activity. As I have alluded to already, we will also be asking some individual applicants to partake in an overnight respite stay. The reason I mention this is that this stay will take place in one of our existing intentional community buildings, and this will give individual applicants a feeling and experience of what it means and what it's like to live in a diverse community. The seventh principle that we'd like to highlight to you is around safety and community harmony. Applicants should not pose a known safety risk to themselves, other residents, and staff. This includes a history of behavior that could be harmful or significantly disruptive. As a part of the process that I've been explaining to you, our evaluation, assessment, and intake process, through self-assessment, in-person assessment, and respite stays, we will find out and further explore any ongoing and unstable health concerns or behavioral challenges that one is experiencing. If one does experience challenges, we will further discuss if there's a plan of support in place, which is very important. This will be done to ensure that the individual that is moving in is in a place of stability. As I already mentioned, is really important part of moving into your own place. The eighth and final principle, we'll talk about equitable allocation and conflict of interest avoidance. Reena must ensure that no unit is provided preferentially to board members, staff, or their families, or to any individual with a close personal or professional relationship to those in governance or management positions with Reena. Everyone must go through the same evaluation, assessment, and intake process. We will be assessing individuals to find out who truly are the best regarding our fit and match principles, which I have now reached the end of explaining. Now, I will give you some information about our resource package. In terms of our resource package, every individual must be assessed to ensure that they have the necessary resources for a meaningful and independent lifestyle. Resource packages assist tenants to be successful and will include information about rent, common supports, direct supports, and other costs, such as food, transportation, clothing, and programming, amongst other needs. Now I'll hand it back to Tony to go over the slides pertaining to rental and common supports costs.
Thanks, Lindsay. I did notice that a few people did join late. Just want to remind people it is recorded, so we will share it next week, so you can watch it at your convenience. And I also want to remind people that if you do have any questions, please look at your chat, and there'll be a person who's named send questions here. You can send it directly to them, and we'll address them at the Q&A segment at the end. All right, so I'm going to start with the rental cost here. So before we go any further, I just really want to establish a clear understanding of the difference between average market rent, which you'll see abbreviated as AMR, and market rent, as I hear them being used interchangeably sometimes, which isn't the case. So let me first discuss market rent. This really refers to the actual price that an apartment would lease for in the current rental market. It's influenced by various factors such as location, size, the amenities offered, and the overall demand in the area. When you're searching online for rentals, market rent is what most of us are accustomed to seeing. On the other hand, we have average market rent, or AMR. This figure is calculated annually based on data collected from Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. It really serves as a benchmark for determining rent levels for different affordable housing programs and policies, and it's for various locations. So for the Frankfort Family Arena residence, we would be looking at the average market rent for Toronto. So now for the fee-for-service tenants at the Frankfort Family Arena residence, as previously shared by Sandy, they really will benefit from that affordable housing arrangement based on the AMRs of the year that they go into service. Now, if you go to the right, you'll see a table that we put together. This compares the projected 2026 rental rates for both a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom unit. And that 2-bedroom unit is for the cost for 2 people. Just a little bit more of information about the rental costs. This is paid on the first of each month by setting up a pre-authorized debit arrangement. I know many of you had some questions around costs and increases in the future. And I do want to let you know that rent is subject to increases annually within the rent increase guidelines, which are published annually here in Ontario. And currently it's set at 2.5% for 2024. Now, let me go talking about common supports. So common supports are really the element that makes the building run so smoothly and efficiently. It includes access to the housing administrator, who really works with the tenants before they come into the building to help them complete documentation. And they're really that go-to person that you go to with any questions that you may have. There's the receptionist. There's on-site security. We also have a 24/7 staff who float from floor to floor and provide security and reassurance checks. Also, individuals have access to limited personal care or for medications assessed through the formal intake process, as Lindsay is discussing. And similar to the rental payments, the common support costs are also paid on the first of each month through a pre-authorized debit arrangement. And they're also subject to change based on any inflationary trends. And currently the costs are $530 per month. So let me bring back Lindsay to go over the direct support costs and continue with the fee-for-service discussion.
Thanks, Tony. So in terms of the direct support costs, they will cover tailored assistance to support daily living activities and personal development. These supports will be provided by Reena staffing. The costs are individualized based on the specific support needs of each participant of the fee-for-service program. We went over some of the areas of support needed when I discussed the third fitted match principle, level of support needed. So as a reminder, services that Reena staff will provide may include assistance with cooking, cleaning, personal hygiene, medication, just to name a few. Direct support costs are subject to increases based on inflationary trends. For example, as staff costs rise, so will overall costs. The current rate for direct support is set at $60 per hour. Costs for individuals will be formalized in a support service agreement. I communicated briefly about our transition period when I explained the third FID match principle level of support needs. I will now provide you with some more information about this. The transition period is a critical phase of 2 to 3 months post move-in, and it's designed for mutual acclimation. This provides the opportunity for the Reena staff to gain a deeper understanding of the individual's needs while the individual acclimates to their staff and new living environment. Enhanced support. This involves increased hours of direct support and supervision to facilitate a smooth transition. Continuous communication. There will be regular meetings with the individual, their family, and Reena staff to discuss progress and update during this transition time. And the last is future planning. There will be assessments conducted by our Reena staff to determine the individual's ongoing support needs. We will now showcase 2 fictional scenarios to illustrate the fee-for-service program. These scenarios are hypothetical, but reflect realistic examples. You'll see scenarios for both low and mid support needs. Each scenario will include cost analysis to aid in understanding the financial aspects of the fee-for-service program, and the cost represents the support after the transition period or time. The first scenario I will share with you will highlight Dean. Dean has low support needs. He currently lives at home with his family. He and his family have a common goal for him to move into his own place. He would like to live in a 1-bedroom apartment. He has been practicing his skills around the house, and in the past few years has gained valuable skills with preparing straightforward meals and taking care of his clothes, including his laundry. He benefits from support such as step-by-step instruction with more complex meal preparation and cooking, as well as with cleaning, especially when he's not familiar with the technique or the cleaning solutions. He doesn't need any support with bathing and taking care of his personal hygiene and grooming needs, as well doesn't need any support to wear clothes that are appropriate for the weather and the occasion. Dean enjoys taking walks to local restaurants, playing in a baseball league, and spending time with his friends and his respite worker. Dean has a part-time job at an electronics store, which is owned by his family. He earns the same wages as other part-time employees and prides himself in his knowledge base around computers. He receives ODSP along with his employment income, as well as passport funding. Surrounding his money, he benefits from guidance and assistance with money management. Dean has learned how to use public transit to get to his place of employment, though he benefits from support when taking other routes when using public transit. He takes medication for his cholesterol and benefits from daily check-ins to make sure he takes it on time. He also benefits from support to attend regular medical appointments and to make complex purchases such as clothing. He experiences some difficulty with reading and benefits from others to assist him to read his emails and his mail. If Dean needs help, he will ask. He is actively learning how to speak up for himself. His family lives in the GTA, actually nearby in Forest Hill, near to our Frankfort Family Reena residence building. And he plans on visiting his family at their home regularly. He plans to spend overnights on the weekends at his family home. The following chart on your screen breaks down Dean's monthly costs. These are the projected costs for 2026, and this could be subject to change. For a 1-bedroom unit, Dean's rent will be $1,847, as Tony mentioned. His common support fees will be $530. His one-to-one direct support costs at $60 per hour for 4 hours each weekday for 4 hours each weekday will be $960 per month or $240 per week. His basic cable, I meant to say for 4 hours each week. I apologize. Sorry about that. That makes more sense. His basic cable will be $23, and his other household costs for food, clothes, entertainment, over and above what entertainment costs using his passport funding, will be variable depending on his needs. His base monthly costs will be approximately $3,360 or $41,280 per year. These costs reflect a typical 4-week month. Some months have more than 4 weeks. As I mentioned, this cost analysis represents the direct support that Dean will need after he transitions to the Frankfort Family Reena residence. And as a reminder, we envision transition time to be approximately 2 to 3 months in total. For a profile similar to Dean's, support hours during the transition will be around 12 hours or more per week. This will depend on one's skills when entering the fee-for-service program. As well, I would like to add that additional charges may occur on the weekends. This will depend if an individual plans to be home in their Frankfort Family Reena residence unit or not. The next illustrative scenario that I will go over is Beth. Beth has mid-support needs. She currently lives at home with her family. She has been talking to her parents about moving out on her own and is interested in assistance to find somewhere that will provide a sense of community and have the supports in place to help her stay healthy, safe, and successful in her life. She's a social person and would thrive in a setting where she has the opportunity to spend time with peers and participate in planned social activities. Beth needs assistance every day to make her meals and snacks. She is nervous in the kitchen around knives and heat. For this reason, she needs help with many of the steps for food preparation and cooking. She also benefits from guidance to make healthy choices and eat a variety of different foods. Beth needs assistance to stay on track of her personal hygiene, take care of her daily chores around her home, and to do all the needed steps to take care of her clothes, including her laundry, as tasks with multiple steps can be hard for Beth to complete from start to finish. Beth receives ODSP and passport funding. She uses her passport funding to go to local attractions such as the zoo and Wonderland on weekends, and for the fee for her employment training program, which she attends twice a week. Related to her love of animals, Beth enjoys her volunteer position at a local animal shelter where she walks and feeds cats and dogs. She volunteers twice a week, along with support from her respite worker. She does most of the tasks, but likes to have her respite worker there just in case she needs help understanding more complex instructions. Beth takes Wheel-Trans on her own to get to and from her volunteer position and employment program. If she needs to travel to other places in the community, she needs accompaniment. Beth experiences challenges understanding numeracy and with more complex reading and comprehension. She needs support with budgeting, paying bills, reading her mail, and reading her email. Beth has support from her immediate and extended family with whom once she moves out of her family home, she plans to go on outings with and to spend holiday time with. The chart on your screen breaks down Beth's monthly cost. As a reminder, these are the projected costs for 2026, and this could be subject to change. For a one-bedroom unit, Beth's rent and common support costs, cable costs, and other household costs will be the same as I explained during Dean's cost analysis. Beth's one-to-one direct supports at $60 an hour for 3 hours each day will be $5,040 per month, or $1,260 each week. As you can see, higher support needs equal higher costs. Her base monthly cost will be approximately $7,440 each month, or $94,320 each year. As a reminder, as I mentioned when I explained Dean's cost analysis, the estimated costs for a profile similar to Beth are based on a month with 4 weeks. As mentioned, this cost analysis represents the direct support that Beth will need after she transitions to the Frankfort Family Reena residence. As a reminder, we envision transition time being approximately 2 to 3 months. And for a profile similar to Beth's, her support hours during transition time would be approximately 35 to 40 hours or more per week. This will depend on one's skill level when entering the fee-for-service program. Now, Tony will go over our next poll question with you.
Hey, thanks again, Lindsay. Really appreciate it. Thanks for providing all that great material and introducing people to the fee-for-service program. All right, so I have another poll question for everybody. We did go through a lot of information, but we really want to hear from you. Again, as we find resources, we absolutely are going to share it with the people who have signed up online for the list. So I'm going to bring a poll up just to let me know. Are you looking for financial planning tools? A resource directory? Any resources that are in your area, or are you really looking forward to our self-assessment tool that's coming up this summer? So just give me one moment. All right, so everyone should see the poll on their screen. Amazing. Looks like a lot of people really are looking for resources in their area. So again, as we find them or as we create any, we'll be forwarding that over to yourself. And I see some people are really interested in financial planning tools as well. So again, as we find them, we'll share them with you. Thank you. I'll keep it up as we go to our next steps here. So this segment, we're really going to wrap up the conversation on the fee-for-service program and the Frankfort Family Arena residents. So I'm going to go over kind of the next steps for people here who are interested in continuing on this journey. So this here, kind of reflecting on that construction phase timeline that we shared earlier. We have 3 distinct phases for this engagement with families for the fee-for-service program. So right now we're starting with this event as kind of a kickoff to the discovery and engagement phase, which will really be engaging with families, staff, and individuals to ensure alignment with project's vision and objectives. And Lindsay will go over some more information in the next slide. The next phase, which we're looking at, will start in the beginning of 2025. We'll really be focusing on collaborating with those selected to plan for a seamless transition, and considering all logistical, emotional, and practical aspects involved with that. The final stage is the finalization and move-in phase. So at that time, really working closely with the intake team to complete those documentations, application, really working with the the housing administrator to complete the tenancy agreement. So that will happen in that stage. And there is that phase that we talked about earlier, that transition phase, which isn't represented here, but that 2 to 3 months after to really acclimate that the tenant and their staff and for ongoing support. All right, so let me bring back Lindsay to talk about that fee-for-service engagement plan for 2024 as well as 2025.
Hi, everyone. So for our fee-for-service engagement plan for 2024, each arrow will highlight the work we will do with individual applicants and families as a part of the discovery and engagement phase that Tony just mentioned. I've mentioned some of these concepts when I communicated about our 8 fit and match principles, though it's important to discuss them further. I will go over each arrow separately, starting with communications. Our email communication list for the Frankfort Family Arena Residents Fee-for-Service program will continue to be used after this event. This is currently and will remain our primary source of communication with you. If you are no longer interested in taking the path with us for you or your family member to be considered for the fee-for-service program at our Frankfort Family Arena Residence, please let us know and we will keep note of that at this time. The next arrow in this plan for 2024 is the event. So you're currently here, you're participating in today's virtual event. This is an important step for us on our path with you, as you are the persons interested in learning more about the fee-for-service model and program. As well, there may be opportunities for more events in the future. Please stay tuned to our email communications for more information about this. The next arrow, tools and resources, what will happen is after this event, via our email communication list, we'll provide you with an FAQ document, which Tony has talked about. This will answer many of the common questions posed to us about the fee-for-service program and the Frankfort Family Arena Residence building. We will also send you a survey. This will give you an opportunity to provide feedback and ask questions. At the beginning of June, we plan to reach out to individuals and families to gauge your interest in the fee-for-service program going forward. For those who remain interested in this, and in the summer, at some point, we will provide you with a link to complete the online self-assessment tool that we have already talked about. This is an essential tool to provide individuals and their families the opportunity to communicate about the individual and about their support needs. This will also provide us with the opportunity to get to know you as a means to further understand your suitability and readiness for the fee-for-service program. As we come across resources in the community related to individual and family readiness for independent living and how to develop independent skills, as well as family readiness, we will share them with you. The last arrow surrounding our fee-for-service engagement plan for 2024 is touch points. A touch point is a point of contact or interaction, and that's what we'll be doing. Before I explain it, I just want to note, and I want to ensure that everyone here is aware that we are not currently keeping a waiting list for our fee-for-service program at our Frankfort Family Reena residence. These touch points will be the beginning steps to help us better understand each individual and their family. Our touch points and journey to determine an individual and family suitability for our fee-for-service program will start in 2024 and will continue in 2025. Myself, as a lead intake social worker for the fee-for-service program, our Reena intake social work team, our Reena supervisors, and a community-based occupational therapist collectively will be involved in communicating, engaging with, and interacting with individuals and their families. The touch points that we will be involved with will include, we will be available to answer any specific questions related to our fee-for-service program. We will review and discuss the completed online assessment tool, and will then reach out to and start communication with interested individuals and their families whom we feel are a great fit for the fee-for-service program and who we want to explore further. This communication will provide us with the opportunity to get to know an individual and their family and to start establishing a meaningful reciprocal relationship. We envision these initial communications to happen via phone or virtual. After this occurs, as a mean to further evaluate and assess individuals and families to determine those whom we want to continue to work with and we feel are a great fit and want to further explore, we will not only communicate on the phone and virtually, but we will progress to meeting in person in one's current living environment. This will be a one-time visit or could involve multiple visits. These in-person meetings will help us better understand how individuals and families are compatible with our 8 fit and match principles, including but not limited to one's life skills and activities of daily living skill development, information on one's support needs, one's stability financially, health-wise, and emotionally, one's suitability to live in an intentional community amongst many other factors. I will now go over our fee-for-service engagement plan for 2025. Each arrow will highlight work we will do with individual applicants and families as a part of the transition planning phase and finalization and move-in phase that Tony mentioned in his chart. The first arrow is roster. As 2025 commences, and we have engaged with interested individuals and families and started completing some of the steps of the 2024 touch points, we will then start to comply our roster of individuals. This roster will consist of individuals that we find have high readiness and who are a high potential and a great fit for our fee-for-service program. The next arrow is touch points. This is the 2025 touch points. This will be a continuation of our 2024 touch points. These touch points will continue to involve reciprocal and detailed-oriented phone, virtual, and in-person communication and meetings. Our 2025 touch points will continue our evaluation and an assessment process to further identify those individuals on our roster that we feel are the best fit for the fee-for-service program. As well, in 2025, as I touched on previously, we are planning for some individuals to have an overnight respite stay in one of our existing intentional communities. We will then communicate and touch base with the respite staff to help us gain an understanding of each individual's independent skills and readiness to live on their own, of course, with supports. Combined, these important touch point steps from 2024 and 2025 will lead us to the applicants who are the best fit for the fee-for-service program, and then to engaging in the intake process for the fee-for-service program with these individuals, which is the next arrow. The next arrow, as I mentioned, is intake, around intake activities and intake process, which will start when we have thoroughly assessed and evaluated the individuals from our roster and then identified those are the best fit. This is already mentioned. At this time, I will support families to complete specific intake documents tailored for a fee-for-service program. Once individual applicants and their families receive these documents, myself and my fellow intake social work team will be available to provide any needed guidance and to answer any questions. Regarding intake, we are aware that there will be a lot of people interested in the fee-for-service program. We do have limited spots. As we grow through the intake process journey, we will keep an open communication so individuals are aware if they have been selected. For those who are not selected at this time, our hope is that you will have gained some value from the journey with us. It is our hope that being involved in the process with us would have offered the opportunity for both individuals and families to learn about readiness for independence and to develop important skills that will lead to opportunities in the future. The final arrow and final phase and step in our fee-for-service engagement plan for 2025 is move-in. The day has arrived. This is the day that individual applicants for the fee-for-service program will officially become a part of the fee-for-service program and move into their new home in the beautiful Frankfort Family Reena residence. This move-in will of course entail ongoing support from Reena staff throughout the transition to one's new home. Now, Tony will go over next steps and facilitate a question and answer discussion.
Thanks, Lindsay. All right, so now we've got to the end of our conversation today. And before we go into our Q&A segment, I do want to go over some next steps. I've noticed some themes around what are the next steps. So I first just want to mention that, really stay tuned for our next email. It will have a copy of our frequently asked questions document. Today's presentation, access to a recording of that, so you can go back if you need to seek further clarification, or if you weren't able to join earlier on, you can go back and review that as well. And there's also going to be a quick survey as well, which will really help enhance our future events. So we'll keep you posted. At this time, it's no need to reach out to us. You'll receive all updates by email, and anything that needs to be actioned upon, you'll see in those emails. We do ask, though, if you aren't interested in continuing on this path with us, on this fee-for-service journey, we will give you the opportunity, probably in the end of May, beginning of June, to let us know, just so really we can tailor our communications to make sure you're receiving the most appropriate information going forward. And also, as Lindsay alluded to earlier, we have recently updated our family handbook, which is really a great starting point as well. So we will also share access to that family handbook, which is found online. It's going to really have information on Reena's programs and guidelines and expectations for not only families, but also for the Reena staff. The self-assessment tool. So by the beginning of summer, we estimate, expect details about our self-assessment tool. It's a really important step for our prospective participants in the fee-for-service residential model. It will give you the opportunity to really learn a bit more about the program, but also get to self-assess yourself and your individual, and your family member. And also in the meantime, really important, just continue skill building activities to really advance towards independent, whether that is through some day programming, community participation programming, respite, some great options in the community. Again, we went through a lot of costs today, and I know I saw a theme around kind of costing and what that looks like. At this time, really assess your financial readiness and what's available to you for funding, perhaps with someone you trust around financial, advising, or some sort of expert out there. And of course, advocate. As Sandy and Brian mentioned, this is an amazing project that's modeled after 2 other projects that we've done in the past. So it's really important for our voices to be out there and really advocate to support for the cause for accessible and affordable housings to everyone here. Thank you. All right, so before we go to the Q&A segment, I do have another poll question that I want to get up. So we did go through a lot of material today. So a question I want to ask to you is, how ready would you be to transition to a residential program in the next 2 years? Again, this is anonymous. I'm not going to see how people respond here. So let me just bring that up. All right, so you should see that on your screen. So let me know how ready you are. Looks like a lot of people are quite ready and prepared to make a transition, which is great. It's great to hear. I think that's going to be really great once we start the further engagement with families who are interested. I see some people who are unsure as well. Hopefully with the resources that we provide you with some more information and more ways to kind of further assess yourself and whether you would be a good fit for this program. Thank you. Lots of participation in that. Appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to go over to our next segment, our final segment, which is our Q&A segment. I'm going to just quickly bring up a document that's going to share so I can help facilitate this. I want to thank Joey. He's been working in the background, collecting a lot of those questions that have been directed to him. And he's put together some themes there. So one question I have here that I'm actually going to direct to Lindsay is, how do I get my child onto the waiting list? I know you briefly touched upon this earlier on, but if you could just provide further clarification on the waiting list and how we're going to be managing people who are interested.
Sure. So the first of all, it's important for you to be on our email communication list so that you can understand what our next steps are. So if you're not on there, somehow you would have gotten a link for today's presentation if it wasn't through the email communication list, but most of you probably got it from there. The other thing is that, which I mentioned, and I'm very happy to mention again, we don't have a waiting list yet. And we actually won't have a waiting list. Really, what's going to happen is we're going to have you engage in the online self-assessment tool for those individuals that are wanting to move forward. And so that will give us the first piece of information, and very actually informative piece of information about you, about your family. And then at that point, we will take the next steps to determine who we think is a great fit and who we want to continue to move forward with in terms of evaluating, assessment, and engaging with. If anyone else has more information to share, please jump in.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it, Lindsay. We're not managing a traditional waiting list. We're really the people who are in that, who've signed up on that list online, who have expressed interest, that's really the people we're reaching out to and engaging with and providing actionable next steps. Thanks, Lindsay, really appreciate that. Sandy, if you're still here, I believe you are. There's a question around, will the Frankfort Family Reena residents offer specialized units for complex healthcare?
Yeah, so as I mentioned with our various models, we have taken learnings from each model and built them in. And our accessibility features in this location, again, we've been refining to ensure that we're looking at quite a lot of what I call universal design or universal accessibility, but we also have units that have higher degree of accessibility as well. And we are working with many of our partners that specialize in supports as well as the specific environment. I'm really trying to ensure that there are units in the building that will meet the needs of individuals that have those type of requirements.
Thank you, Sandy. And actually going to direct the next question to you as well, specifically around staffing. There's a question from a few people around that person currently has a support worker who participates in their daily support services needs, and if they can live at the Frankfort Family Reena residence with them.
So at this point in time, as we know, affordable housing, there are sort of principles that we have to comply, and that we have to hold ourselves to, and that every unit is and every space in the building is really meant for somebody who has a need. So it's not meant for workers or other people to live in the units, because it actually would take away from people with disabilities or people that require this type of housing. So we always are very interested in various models, but we also have to be very careful and very uh, cognizant of the resources of housing and how we have to utilize them. So at this time, that we would be looking at models where individuals would be living in the units, that we're maximizing the number of spaces in the units for people with disabilities that really require this type of housing.
Thank you, Sandy. And Brian, I have a question for you. If you could kind of just give a little bit more context to the amenity spaces that we have that planned for the building.
Sure. So first of all, we have 3 below grade parking levels Some of them are for residents and some for visitors, and very little for staff. The intent is staff are not parking here, but using public transportation or parking in the area. Above, on the ground level, we have a cafe, members cafe, which could be run by residents or could be run by a third party for residents, but it's fairly open, so members of the community may come in and join in the cafe or buy a drink, and it'll be a paid for coffee shop. Next to that is a games room, a multi-purpose activity center, really a place to hang out and socialize for most people, and we'll have multiple uses. On the first floor, we have we have laundry, we have a library, we have some offices, administrative offices. It's a truncated floor, so it's an in-between floor that we have. The floor above that, on the second floor, has a arts room, culinary space, so life skills, cooking, preparation, and then a multi-use room, but really a media room for movies and karaoke and that sort of thing, as well as a yoga studio and a gym with gross motor fitness equipment and activity space. There is on the fourth floor a members sort of family lounge where members, residents could book the room for a family event. It leads out to an outdoor courtyard or rooftop patio on the fourth floor. That's the only place where we have balcony type spaces. Everything else does not have balconies. And then on multiple floors, we have some built-in amenities, usually administrative amenities. These are offices and program spaces for the staff to operate out of or to support services. There are 2 floors that have a unique social lounge on them that are built for the residents of those floors and their particular need. Other amenities in the design include many of the floors have the capacity to have ceiling track lifts and supports. All our units will have backup generated power into the unit, so no one will ever be without power. I'm not sure if that's the amenities the person was asking for, but there are lots of features in this building. Every door is pre-wired to allow for a power opener. Bathrooms will have accessible supports, whether you need them or not. Your towel holder will be able to hold the weight of a few hundred pounds, and things like that are built into and part of the features of the building. I hope that helps answer some of that.
Yeah, that was really helpful. And also,
I forgot the back area. We have a beautiful back area that onto the Beltway, and so we have a beautiful back area that again might have barbecuing or just lounge area or social space and places to put bicycles and other things.
thank you, Brian. I just want to remind everyone, if you do have questions, we aren't going to be, we asked you to just send it to the chat to send questions here. Again, I'm going to go for a few more questions. I think a lot of these questions were covered in the event, and I suggest reviewing the event once we share it. We also have a frequently asked questions document, I believe, with about 10 frequently asked questions. I think many of those will be addressed there, but I'm really going to pull out the ones that maybe we haven't really discussed fully today. So I know there's a lot of questions around ODSP. Someone asked around ODSP and was asking about ODSP shelter allowance. And I believe currently right now it's 550 people who are in the fee-for-service program. Again, that's based on the average market rent for that area, which we project to be around $1,800 a month. They could provide that information to ODSP, which will allow them to have access to the full amount of their ODSP shelter allowance. If that's correct. I see Lindsay, yes, perfect. So again, it will help supplement that through that ODSP shelter allowance there. There was also around ODSP funding in general. Maybe Lindsay, just really briefly, ODSP funding if around for the cost for supports.
So I'm not certain what the person was meaning, but I can comment that ODSP, you can request that you receive the maximum shelter allowance as someone that's living independently. But as we know, the costs for direct supports, average market rent, one-to-one direct supports will be over and above what ODSP will be providing to an individual each month.
Thanks, Lindsay. And I think once you have more engagement with families, you can really talk about those specific arrangements with them too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That'll be a part of our process, our ongoing communication. We'll talk about finances and where money's coming from and how can families make it work.
Exactly. Thank you, Lindsay. Just a little bit back to the building as well. I'll take this question, but they were asking, how many of the 22 beds is a 1-bedroom and how many is a 2-bedroom? I can say confidently that the majority of them will be a 1-bedroom. I believe all of our fee-for-service individuals who are in our intentional community model are in a 1-bedroom. It is the most successful. We will explore 2-bedroom opportunities, but those are typically for siblings, for example, or family members who are living together. It can be quite challenging with 2 people with 2 different families living together. There's some complexities there, but that's just a little bit of information there. So definitely more 1-bedrooms than 2-bedrooms. Someone also asked around, what about the remaining units in the building? There's 168 beds. What about the remaining? Again, this is an intentional community, quite diverse. There's going to be people in the building from all walks of life through different partners, different arrangements in the building. So this fee-for-service model that's in the building is just a vibrant fragment of the diversity in the building. So just wanted to bring that up.
I think part of that question is really asking, okay, so there may be other partners in the building. Can I go and access supports through them if they're more appropriate? And it may be some of those agencies or services who are partners in the building, utilizing some of the units or securing some of the units would be appropriate to build a relationship. And it's early on.
There'll be partners,
for
the
us
partners
to
in
know
there.
those.
Yeah, and again, kind of reflecting back, the community partners who are confirmed will have their own process with intake, and would bring people into their programs into the building there. I mean, there might be opportunities to be able to explore some enhancements to tenants in the building based on what supports or umbrella of supports that are available. All right, so just I think about 2 more questions here. There is another question around staff too. I know, Sandy, we talked earlier about live-in caregivers, but maybe talk if you could just kind of chime in briefly about support workers who are permitted to enter into the building, because I know some people here probably have some existing support workers, and how that would look involvement-wise.
Yeah, so as we mentioned in the presentation, that it's a very complex model. We want to make sure that it's safe, it's secure, and it meets a high level standard and expectation. The way that we do that is that ensure that the supports are given by the organization staff. So that would be Reena staff or partner agency staff. Obviously, outside the building, if people are going to various programs or going off, of course, if people want to utilize their own staff for programs outside the building, but within the residential environment, it's one way for us to ensure that there is some control over the people entering our building and also the services and supports that are being offered. As we have said, this is a program where the diversity of people in the building, our buildings are probably some of the most diverse out there. It also means that we as an organization that are overseeing this, there's a huge amount of things that we have to take into consideration. And we have to maintain quality and standards. And the way that we can do that is that the people that are providing the supports in the building, we know. Not only do we know them, but we oversee them, or our partner agencies oversee them and direct their activities. That to us is very important, and it ensures that people are getting the supports that they need. We certainly don't want anybody. I think when we started this model, we were very concerned about people coming into the buildings without sufficient supports. I mean, that would be a nightmare for any social service agency. We have to make sure not only the quantity of the supports, but also the appropriateness of the supports. It's a very highly vulnerable building with individuals. And so for us, we take that very seriously.
Thank you, Sandy. Really appreciate that. Just one final question here. And again, I'm seeing some questions that are very specific, a lot around financial. So kind of reflecting back, I would suggest, speaking to somebody who might be an financial expert that you're comfortable with around that. And as we find resources, we can share them as well. And as you go on this journey with us, we can kind of address any of those questions more specifically at that time. And that frequently asked questions does address some of the other themes that we're seeing, but I did specifically want to bring up one question around day program or community participation program and what that's going to look like in the building. The building itself, we have all those wonderful amenity spaces that Brian touched upon earlier. And we are exploring opportunities to be able to enhance our community participation program into the Frankfort project, using those great spaces that we have there. So again, we're still in that earlier phase, but that's what we're looking at to bring that program into that building. Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate everyone attending today. We had great participation. Before we go, of course, I'm going to ask one more final poll question. So after hearing the presentation, going over the questions and answer segment, how interested are you in the fee-for-service residential model? So let me bring that poll up for everyone to participate in that. So launch it now. You should see it on your screen. Amazing. I'm seeing a good mix here. Seeing a lot of people who are very interested, some people who are somewhat interested, but maybe need a little bit more information before considering it. And a few people, it's not applicable to them applicable to them. Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you. I'll leave this up here, but again, thank you so much for carving time out of your busy day, this beautiful, wonderful day that we had today here in Toronto. Thank you for joining us. And Brian, I know you always are so great at the end of presentations. I want to invite you for any final last words.
Thank you, Tony. I just think it's amazing to be able to achieve the kind of success or the development we're doing. It's not easy, and I want to thank. I know there are a number of board members, a number of contributors, donors. This really takes a lot of effort. Conceptually, projects like these, if you're a normal developer, takes 10 plus years. For us, we're fast, but it is challenging. We're in a challenging environment in terms of, and we need to do more. And so we thank you for taking the time to hear about this aspect. This is not a foregone conclusion that these buildings get created. It does take a lot of risk, and I want to acknowledge that the Reena board took on a huge risk when it started this project without knowing it would ever be built. Now we're in a position where we know we're going to be able to do it. But at the time when we started this, and I just want to thank them. I think they're be patient with us. We are a small team trying to do a large initiative. We won't know all the answers now. We're still 2 years away from opening, and we won't know who all the partners and what all the availability and funding sources may change. The province may change their structure of policies. So anything is still possible, and everything is doable, and together we can make this happen. So thank you, and I appreciate all of your time.
Well said, Brian. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your week.